What's going on, everyone? I'm sure we're going to have more videos like this in the future, as one of the biggest things that I've gotten after I posted the video about my terrible choice that I'm making at the current moment is keep us updated, and also why Blade of Justice? Why Helos Warblade? What is going on with you? Why are you even going this direction? Well, let's get this out of the way. First off, this is ultimately just because I want to try something different. I've been playing skill-based builds the entire time I've played this game, whether it was Whisper, Sky Splitter, even experimenting with some other options out there. This is basically all I've ever played, and I'm curious about trying something that's a little bit differently based. Not only that, but also because I happen to be one of the few fortunate people. I shouldn't say few, but one of the fortunate people that has played the game for a little while. I happen to have Raphael. And so I'm going to be one of those people that actually am enabled to actually go for the Helos Warblade. I've mentioned this in many videos, but I don't rate Helos Warblade very highly because Raphael is not accessible. It's just not an accessible option. So Helos Warblade as a build for anyone that starts the game is just not a great option, because you have to be a long-standing player in order for this to be a decent option. So I figured, because I'm one of those people that actually have Raphael, let's give it a shot. Let's give it a whirl. Let's see what these non-skill based builds, more specifically the Helos Warblade, can do with the Raphael engaged. Now, that said, I want to kind of talk through some of the strategies I am going through, and maybe I'll do some more videos. Like I said, I'll probably have updates for you all as I get some changes in gear going. But one of the big things is that there are a lot of people out there that either maybe you started with a beginner build and you went with Blade of Justice or Angel Bow or whatever it is that you initially went for, and now you're in a position where you are transitioning with your swap talismans, and you're just curious kind of what the process actually looks like. Now, if you are transitioning from a beginner build, then it is quite easy, because if you've watched any of my beginner build videos or many other people's, a lot of the times it's make sure you're following the build path to whatever weapon you're trying to move into. And most of the time, if they've been, giving you the beginner build for the last couple of months, it's going to be transition into Whisper. So there's not going to be any difference in terms of functionality for the build. But if you are someone that maybe started with Blade of Justice or maybe started with Angel Bow or whatever, as things have changed over months, right? Beginners builds, the best beginner builds change, the best weapons change, the options that you have change. But if you're like a Sky Splitter user, or you're a Whisper user, and you're swapping between the two, or you're swapping to Helos Warblade, and you're just curious kind of what that process actually looks like, that's kind of where I'm dropping in some of my commentary here, maybe to give you guys an insight on what my game plan actually involves. So we got to start off here first off with, well, and perfect, I got the research done, the inheritance. Now, I actually did have about 600 million gold. You guys might have seen in the previous videos. I had a big stockpile, and I was kind of just spending it a bunch. I was spending a bunch, kind of using a lot of my books. If you guys had also watched some of my previous videos, you would note that I had a huge stockpile of basically all of the different types of books: skeleton, knights, ghost, as well as ranger books. Although I had, less ranger books, I just didn't actually spend a bunch on my inheritance here, because I was pursuing the ghost very religiously, and I only basically picked up any ghost books I possibly can, but I didn't spend any from the other legacies. Now, with the ghost, I basically maxed it out, and I do have a lot of middle nodes invested into, so this is going to be my top priority as I'm preparing everything else. This is the only one that I can actively work on right now, because with the Helos Warblade, we're going to be using the Skeleton Legacy, so I want to fill in these middle nodes, getting the really this node right here, the combo attack base coefficient, is huge, but really all of the nodes that work with the combo is going to be pretty critical. So I want to be getting down at least to the skeleton guard, so kind of fill out all the way down to here, which is going to require a good amount of books, but also a good amount of time, and more importantly, a good amount of gold. Actually, gold is going to be the bottleneck with this one. As such, I've also progressed a lot of my other legacies or other inheritance. I got to tier 4 with the knights, and then I've also progressed a lot here. And I also, already was in tier 4 with the ranger, but also finished out tier 4 with the ranger. Just didn't progress towards tier 5 and tier 6, because this is just a good usage of getting stronger right now. Same thing with the dragon. I've also progressed this down to tier 3 at least, just using up a bunch of gold, getting a bunch of more stats on my characters, and trying to actually go towards the direction of the skeleton. I saved a lot of the gold mainly because, well, the ghost, even though I was progressed deeply into it, I didn't know exactly which direction I wanted to go, so I was kind of stockpiling a little bit as I made that decision. This is going to be the first active progress I'm making. And if you're swapping to a build, if it's a skill-based build, then you'll probably stay within the ghost legacy. So that's nice. So you don't have to kind of compete with this, but if you are swapping any sort of legacy, this can take some time. These are very, very long grinds. Now, fortunately, with the new updates over the past few months, I say new, but it's not really new, all the other legacies or inheritance get reduced time to upgrade if you happen to have that one that's progressed very deeply. So that's going to be nice. Skeleton's very quick. So even though I'm at tier 4 and almost at tier 5, it's only taking, 2 hours for each little upgrade here, which is not nearly as long as the ghost took. I mean, those were like 24-hour upgrades, right? So that's the first step. This is something that I'm actively working on. The second thing that I am stockpiling for, because this is going to be the biggest change, is swap talismans. So swap talismans is not something that I had a huge focus on. I would always pick them up as they came along. I was actually let me go back into the market here. For the magic crystals, I was actually just stockpiling a bunch of the slime kings because this was the sword chi pet. So I'm at actually 9 stars, and I'm done. I'm not going to go to 10 stars because that's just a pet stat increase, but 9 stars gives you that sword chi damage increase. So that's what my focus was. And as such, a lot of my magic crystals here were going into that. So I wasn't picking up swap talismans or even resonance crystals. So I have no resonance crystals and I have no swap talismans. Well, I have a few. As you can see, I have 3. So this is going to be a pretty big priority because with the pets, actually, you're going to want to go for all sorts of different gear, pets, and basically everything. Basically everything. Now, with this, the Slime King can be used, but really I don't want it to. I'm going to be wanting to use, as we see here with the pets, let's pull up. Oh my gosh. We're just going to pull up the collectibles here. There we go. We're going to be using the Elsa, Freya, and then the third one's going to be the unicorn, actually. So I do actually have a little bit of progression into the unicorn. That's going to just give me a lot of extra crit damage and such. I don't need the Slime King because I'm going to get that extra combo rate, and more importantly, I don't have the Sword Chi to affect it, so don't really need to worry about that. But it's really, really the focus should be eventually getting the Piggy, which is not something that I have at the current moment. So we're going to kind of fill in that portion. But as a result, what I will want to eventually do is kind of transition from all these upgrades into really focusing on the upgrades for the other pets that I have, which is going to be really important. Like, so unicorn, getting the Piggy if I can. This is going to be pretty important as these are the pets that I'm looking for. And on that note, with the swap talismans, well, all of these arcanas, similar to the pets, I'm going to have to dismantle, return the items, and start going towards the arcanas for my specific gear, which means all of these actually are going to require swap talismans. So I'm going to need at least 4 swap talismans for each one of these. So that's going to be a big progress. And then I also will need 5 swap talismans. Realistically, I don't need a swap talisman for the for the armor or this ring. Actually, I can just kind of start progressing the rings and using the fodder that I have to get these. Maybe, depending on the situation, it'll be easier to just get this to Mythic and then use a swap talisman. So I will definitely be using a swap talisman on all 3 of these. Yes, the Bloodstained Grail is okay, but you actually do want the different gear. So I need 1, 2, 3, at least potentially 4 different swap talismans that I'm be looking for. I can still use the Icy Bubble in the time being, and that'll be a different, different tackle, as that's going to be really, really long in the game. Really, really long in the game. So those are all progress. But then on top of that, my other thing I need to think about is resonance, right? So right now, as I mentioned, want to be using Raphael, but I have the resonance with Leonardo, with my Dragon Girl. So I want to cancel this, and then I would also want to resonate with the Raphael. So that's going to be a little bit of a magic crystal grind, kind of passive. I don't need to worry about that too much. And then the other thing I need to think about, and this is kind of just going to take a long time, is heroes and brands. Now, the heroes and brands, there's a lot of changes I need to make here. This is going to be the biggest, even though I need to change like artifact, I need to make minor changes to my mounts, I need to make changes to my pets. The brands are going to be the longest grind alongside the gear. So gear, obviously, because I need to swap talismans and I need to continue to progress. But the brands are going to be basically starting from scratch. So I'm going to be wanting to use Undead Pirate. It's going to be requiring a lot of skeleton books. So I'm going to have to work on that. I want to get this guy to Mythic. I'm pretty close, to be honest. So I'm not too far away. And I'll be replacing the Knight of the End. I can still use Knight of the End, but I would like Undead Pirate in here. And then I also, for PvE, I'm going to be looking for your Wild Vulture, which I have. Want that at Mythic as ideally as I possibly can. And then I also would like to have, well, I've got Joker, but I want to replace Joker. I am really looking for the Undead Assassin or Undead Swordsman. Sorry, I thought it was the Assassin, but it's actually the Swordsman. So global basic attack damage, that's what I'm doing with the Helos Warblade. So I'm going to want the Undead Swordsman, which I haven't even started yet. So that's going to be a big, big grind. And then White Tiger, which I don't even think I have unlocked. Yep, White Tiger. That's going to replace the Murloc and give me a bunch of combo damage. And then the White Robe Wizard, which I actually do have unlocked. So that's going to be my final goal. Now, fortunately for me, I can use, I don't have to go for the, White Robe Wizard. That's going to be like a late game. A late game. And then in the meantime, I can use things like the Bone Club Golem or the Murloc or the Joker. So Wild Vulture, Mythic is probably going to be one of the things I work on. I'm really going to be investing into a lot of brands, a lot of gear, that type of stuff. And there's a lot of other things that I'll be working on that I'll have to think about, such as, if I'm going for the basic attack build, I will want to be swapping over some of my Mythic treasures. Like this one gives me final skill damage. This one gives me final skill damage. Both of these don't do a whole lot in the Helos Warblade. Mask of Tutankhamun. This is global attack, which is still going to be good, but this is the third one I was working on. I'm really going to want the Mona Lisa and the Beyond Zhong. So these two are going to be the focuses for me after the mask. I'm just going to finish out the masks. I'm only 20 shards away, and then I'm going to work on the Beyond Zhong and the Mona Lisa. Based on how much I'm able to get, I'm usually able to get around 40 to 50 shards per Holy Grail. So it's going to take potentially about 3 months for me to get the Beyond Zhong and the Mona Lisa completed, but then I'll be in a pretty good spot. Down here, there's a lot of legendary ones. These are ones I'm not as worried about, mainly because, well, you can get these a lot easier through the random events, right? And so like basic attack crit rate might be good, counter rate is decent, but like global HP, all these are fine. Kind of just generally just getting more and more and more of these relics is going to be useful for me in the long run. So that's going to be just kind of a side focus. It's not really going to be something I focus on. My main focus is, like I said, swap talismans, inheritance priority right now, brands. These are the things that I need. The gear I can still work on, but in order to even function with the gear, the swap talismans are going to be the thing I need most. So when the new events come around, for example, you have a Magic Celebration coming in, I will be 100% focusing in on, yes, I absolutely want to go for all the standard rewards that I'm looking for. Divine Weapon Cubes, the options for legendary relics, any special supreme chests or anything like that. Yes, and yes. But I also have an extra side priority on swap talismans, which is not something that I normally pick up. They're cheap from the events, to be honest, so I think I should just be able to sneak that in. And then as a side note, as well, while I am working on swap talismans, brands. So all the different brand boxes that I can get are going to be pretty important. The nice thing about this, honestly, I think the most fun thing for me, even though I am swapping builds, I'm probably going to set myself back, definitely in combat power, potentially in power overall. I think it actually will break even, assuming I make all the changes that I need, is I just have a more built out account, which is kind of fun. You know, it's not necessarily going to matter, but like if I ever want in the future to swap again, I'll have a +1 Prince of Sanctuary, for example. I'll have some resources invested into the Knight of the End. I'll have the Ghost Legacy completed. I'll have, you know, various different brands progress, like the Joker, or, you know, whatever other brand I'd be looking for. Like if I want to swap to Whisper, I have the Rogue built out, you know, and eventually I'll get Cleopatra, right? It's just kind of fun to note that as I'm going along. I'll have a bunch of legendary rings that I can easily transition over. It's just kind of fun. And that's kind of the point of the game. So that's what the plan is. Thanks for watching, everyone. And hopefully you enjoy.